All right, Tigers, here we go. Unit 12, 4, Reagan in the first term. A couple things we want to cover here. Going into everything going on. Remember, we're going to have a little bit of a Quizlet due tomorrow, and the, what's it called? Reading quiz will be Monday at that point. So, a couple things. Remember, we're still first term here, and we'll get into Reagan in his second term tomorrow. But Reagan, guys, wanted to restore U.S. foreign policy. We talked about this a little bit under Ford, about making the world respect us again. Reagan specifically went after Carter repeatedly for allowing America to fall. Even though America seemed to fall under Ford, the blame was really laid on Carter this time. So how do we get this? Increasing military spending. 2, we actually started going after issues in the Middle East and in Latin America. We'll talk about this in a little bit of detail here. And then finally, we're going to win the Cold War. Not fight the Cold War, win the Cold War with the Soviets. So how do we get there? Well, some issues and consternation between us and the Soviets. February of 1980. The United States defeated the Soviets at Lake Placid in New York in ice hockey. Remember, that's not the game that gave the Americans the gold medal. It just got them to the gold medal game. But you start to see this combativeness start to take place. In the Summer Games of 1980, the U.S. boycotted the Moscow Summer Games. So we didn't go. And in 1984, the Soviets boycotted the games in Los Angeles. So tensions and consternations are kind of high between the two powers at this time. They continue to get worse when the president goes out and labels the Soviets. Repeatedly, over and over and over again, he referred to the Soviets during the first term as the evil empire, that communism was evil, and everybody started to see this over and over again. And what you start to see is that a number of anti-communist movies become very popular during Reagan's first term. Rambo 2 and later on Rambo 3, War Games, The Day After, and Red Dawn, which may be one of the worst movies known to man. But Reagan, guys, builds up this aura, and the labeling of the Soviets as evil allows him to frame the argument for what they need to do. How do you defeat the Russians? You do it through what we talked about, SDI, or Star Wars, right? Here is this is a great one. A ground-based laser shoots off a laser pulse that hits a mirror, and then hits a Russian threat coming over, right? You see other things, really cool little things. But remember, the issue that we were balancing this time is that SDI, or Star Wars, right, would have cost us trillions of dollars at a time when Reaganomics involved slashing budgets. So we had a lot of social issues going on, well, at this point. Excuse me. So this sort of percolates, guys, with his involvement of the Reagan Doctrine, which said the U.S. pledged to support anti-communist freedom fighters who battled the Soviets. So it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend line, right? That we thought that nations should begin to embrace capitalism, and that the CIA was going to actively and openly fund these nations fighting. This is an American with a group of Cambodians fighting the communists. Okay? So areas that we would see this, make sure you know these: Afghanistan, Angola, Nicaragua, Cambodia, Ethiopia, all over the map, right? In Africa, in Asia, in South America, right? Now here's the most important point of the day. The goal is to free the world from communism. Not like containment to play for a tie. Not brinkmanship to push them to the 45 borders, right? But to eliminate communism. And to negotiate, you play to win, not to lose. And you would negotiate your way to this point from a position of strength. Do we get there, right? So, our relations with the Soviets get even worse. Excuse me. When Korean Airlines 007, no, it's not James Bond's plane, gets shot down on a flight from Anchorage, Alaska, here's Anchorage, right, to Seoul, South Korea. Now, the pilot guy should have followed this dotted line, avoiding the Soviet Union, and gone around, flown over Tokyo, right to Seoul. However, he took a very direct route over this area here called Petropavlovsk, which is home to a Russian nuclear base. And eventually the plane was shot down by a Soviet MiG off the coast of Sakhalin Island. The pilot warned the passenger plane that he was armed and said, "You guys need to land. We think you're spying, blah, 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 blah." The pilot of Korean Airlines kept going. So the Russian pilot dropped back, fired a missile, and exploded the plane over that. Hi, Mikey. You're on camera. Mikey is leaving. Reagan referred to this, guys, as an act of barbarism. The British thought this was so bad that we were getting close to World War III. Okay? You say Grenada, I say Grenada, right? I think it's Grenada, but it's a cheap song. It's a cheap joke. Okay? But sometimes you need to find a way to feel good about yourself. So we had issues in Lebanon. We talked about that with the terrorists there and eventually leaving Lebanon. So we need a win. So we send the U.S. military into Grenada, whatever it is, right? 6,000 of our soldiers invade this tiny little island nation. Here it is, off the coast of Venezuela, okay, to kick out 700 Cubans. This is crazy. The justification that we used publicly was that we needed to rescue 1,000 med students. The med students were fine. We claimed the Cubans were taking control of them. It just wasn't happening. So we called it Urgent Fury. What a great name. Now, we had some issues in taking out the Cubans because, I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, we hadn't really planned for this mission. We just went. So legitimately, this is a true story. As the Marines were wading out of the ocean up onto the little town here of capital, I believe it's the capital of St. George's, they came up a beach. And as they came up a beach, there was a convenience store type place at the edge of the beach. And the U.S. forces surrounded it with their guns drawn, and a tank sort of rolled up to the front window. And a general walked inside and bought a candy bar and a travel map. Mikey finds this funny. And then took the map out to the tank and sort of unfolded it, like you used to do with like a map, and basically said, well, where in the hell are we? I mean, that's legitimately the issues that we had at the time. However, you see there are some U.S. casualties. Ultimately, a win is a win is a win. And it sort of made us feel better about, having issues in other places of the world, especially under Carter at that time. The United Nations guys deplored the mission. They said we used to have a policy under FDR called the good neighbor policy. Be a good neighbor to people in our hemisphere. It goes back to the Monroe Doctrine, the corollary of the Monroe Doctrine. All things go with that. Okay? That was now dead at that point. And the last thing domestically that we got to get into is the air traffic controllers. They went on strike August of 81 during the summer travel season. They wanted better pay and a 32-hour work week. Reagan said, you got to go back. So there's Taft-Hartley, and we've talked about the importance of Taft-Hartley repeatedly in terms of breaking strikes, and said, you guys have 48 hours or else. A number of the air traffic controllers came back. Some didn't. So those that didn't, on August 5th, Reagan fired all of them right then at that point. Executive action. And then they had been building up a core of relief personnel. Reagan asked the people that came back, you got to work a little bit longer now, we'll take care of you. Once enough people had been trained, however, he gave them better pay in a 32-hour work week and said, this is not the way that you handle things. So ultimately, as you see it going on, Reagan had a really successful first term. There were some bumps, but remember, he's the Teflon president. Nobody blames him for any of these things. So as we rolled in the election of 84, Reagan was super popular. Okay, there's Ronnie. There's H.W. He's going to be taken on by Carter's former VP, Walter Mondale from Minnesota. And Mondale will make a statement by having a female VP by the name of Geraldine Ferraro, the first woman to run as a major party vice presidential candidate in U.S. history. Okay? Mary C. Geraldine did very well in the debates and was very organized. Note the fact that Reagan got every state but one. Mondale did win his home state, a tip of the cap to him on that one, but he only got 13 electoral votes. In modern times, this is the worst electoral defeat in U.S. history. And Reagan found a way to make it a very simple argument to people. Okay? Reagan's victory in 84 was powered by what we call a conservative coalition of voters, including what we call many Reagan Democrats. Okay? People that voted for Reagan, but voted for Democrats in other offices. Because he just found a way to get these things done to the American people. So how do I show that to you? Well, here we go. It's like my favorite ad of all time.
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes, more than at any time in the past 4 years.
There's Granny.
This afternoon, 6,500 young men and women will be married. And with inflation at less than half of what it was just 4 years ago, they can look forward with confidence to the future. It's morning again in America. And under the leadership of President Reagan,
There's the
our
flag.
country is prouder and stronger.
Notice the symbol. There's
And
always a flag.
Why
Or
would we
somebody
ever
else
want
does
to
that.
return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
What a great ad. I mean, seriously.